Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I am just so excited for today's show. I am going to be welcoming one of the great sci-fi auteurs, and I am talking about Nicholas Meyer, the guy who made Time After Time with Malcolm McDowell and Mary Steenburgen, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, and God, and the day after, the highest rated TV miniseries of all time. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that. He's also written very interesting Sherlock Holmes novels. And he's also the guy who directed Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson in the movie They Fell in Love, Volunteers, my favorite Tom Hanks comedy from the 80s. And I can't wait. This is going to be so awesome. I can't wait. I'm the happiest fanboy in the whole wide world right now. It's going to be awesome. I can't say that enough. So, here is my interview with Nicholas. Hey, Nick.
Tom, how are you?
I am great, sir. How are you? Well, welcome to the show. This is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Well, I hope it works out for you.
So, going back in time, I know that you've written novels, you've directed films. Did you always gravitate towards books and movies early on in your childhood?
Yes, from the time I was extremely small. We did not, this is telling you how old I am, we didn't have a television until I was, probably 6 or 7 years old. And I was never in a movie theater until I was probably 6 or 7. So my first orientation was books and being read to, I think largely by my dad. And I got very used to, what you could call the oral tradition, and fell in love with the sounds, the musical sounds of words. Mm-hmm. Became enchanted by all that. And when I learned how to read, I just never stopped. And when I went to the movies, I think I was about 7 years old. I'd never seen anything like that. Mm-hmm. And the movie that I went to, it scared the living crap out of me, and I ran out of the theater terrified. But then later, I had what my father, who was a psychoanalyst, described as a phenomenon called counterphobia. And counterphobia is where the object feared becomes the object loved. And having been traumatized by this movie experience, A, I fell in love with movies. B, I fell in love with that movie. And C, I developed a big man crush on the star of that movie. Mm-hmm. With an actor named Laurence Olivier. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't get enough of all that stuff. And so, I was baptized by words and books and movies. And from a very early age, I started making up my own stories. And first, my dad would sort of take dictation and write these stories down. They were little stories about how our dog carried the newspaper home from the grocery store in her mouth and things like that. And then I expanded from there.
Wow. Do you remember the first movie you ever saw?
That was the first movie. It was called The Beggar's Opera.
Oh, okay.
It was directed by Peter Brook. I think he was 23 or 24 at the time. And I guess he's still with us. I don't think Peter Brook has died yet.
Huh.
Anyway.
Wow. How about the first novel you read growing up?
Good question. I started with usual Dick and Jane, Splat Run stuff. And then I read Winnie the Pooh, and then I read Alice in Wonderland, which still remains one of my all-time favorite books. And then I probably graduated to The Three Musketeers and The Count of Monte Cristo, and then my dad introduced me to Jules Verne and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Around the World in 80 Days. And there was a novel by a guy that people don't remember very much anymore, named Howard Pyle, P-Y-L-E, he was an illustrator. And he was like the teacher of N.C. Wyeth and that whole school of sort of Maxwell Parrish and Norman Rockwell, sort of related school of American illustration. But he wrote a novel set in the Middle Ages called Men of Iron. Mm-hmm. That was a favorite book of mine. I know it was made into a movie with Tony Curtis, but I don't think I saw it. It was called The Black Shield of Falworth.
Yeah, Howard.
So, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Howard Pyle.
Nancy Drew, all that.
Yeah, Howard Pyle. That doesn't sound familiar to me. I should look up his stuff.
Oh, you should, because I mean, as an illustrator, it's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, and he did The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, and you got to look at that stuff. And he was, as I say, tremendously influential. You can trace him from Howard Pyle to N.C. Wyeth, and from N.C. Wyeth to all the other Wyeths, Andrew Wyeth, and so on and so on and so forth. And Jamie, I don't know if Jamie is still alive, but didn't he do the portrait of Nixon or something? Anyway, it's a long list of guys. And very fun stuff to look at those pictures. Those Scribner books, the Robert Louis Stevenson, the Black Hour, and all that stuff. All beautiful, beautiful color. I mean, they're paintings, and you can tell that when they made the Errol Flynn Robin Hood, they just copied everything. And when, Michael Mann made The Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis, he copied all the N.C. Wyeth illustrations, and he acknowledged that those were his inspirations.
Mm-hmm. Were you a big sci-fi movie lover? Because you've done a lot of sci-fi movies.
Yeah, I never made a distinction, and I don't, I guess, make a distinction in my own mind, sort of between genres. I never really cared whether it was science fiction or the Middle Ages or modern day. I didn't care whether it was the Hardy Boys or Sherlock Holmes. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted it to be one of those things where you wanted to know what happened next. Mm-hmm. And I'm a sucker for that. Even in really puerile ways. The other day, because we're all housebound, I was looking at something on Facebook, and it was a car chase. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why am I, spending my precious time on Earth watching this idiot motorcyclist? Because the answer came back, you wanted to see what happened next.
Yeah. So you like a good mystery then?
I think the narrative is a good mystery. You start out with somebody, you learn some information, and they're faced with a dilemma. And the dilemma is, what are they going to do? How will they handle it? Will they live or will they die? Will he get the girl or will he not get the girl, or vice versa? And you stick around to find out the answer. And whether that involves, something that is what you would call mystery, or whether, like the opening of David Copperfield, the narrator says something to the effect of, will I prove to be the hero of my own life? These pages must show. So you read on to find out if he's going to be the hero of his own life. Not exactly a mystery, but in another way,
Mm-hmm. I was reading you graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in theater and filmmaking. Were you interested in becoming an actor at that time?
Well, that's funny. I mean, yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor, and when I was in the theater department at the University of Iowa, I acted in a whole bunch of plays, and I discovered two things. One is I discovered that I wasn't a very good actor.
Mm-hmm.
I was not good at it. I couldn't rid myself of a certain inevitable self-consciousness about what I was doing. And to be a really good actor, you have to really be able to throw that away and just make believe and totally be in it. And it's a special gift. And not a lot of people have it, and I don't. But at the same time, I discovered something else, which is I discovered directing. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a director when I got to college, and I got to know really well because they were always yelling at me. And then I thought, well, maybe I'd rather be the guy doing the yelling than the guy being yelled at. And I think they were yelling at me also because a lot of times I thought I had a better idea about how to do something. I don't know that I was right, but the very fact that I kept having these thoughts, those were sort of directorial thoughts rather than, I think, an acting thought. I'm not sure. But that's sort of an answer to your question.
Yeah, I remember you played George Raft in the Mae West TV movie of the week.
I was terrible there too, and I only had one line.
Yeah, but you look like him.
Yeah, I did look like. That's how I got the part.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. So from there, from University of Iowa, did you move to Los Angeles to pursue the business?
No, I was scared to do that. I had never been to Los Angeles, and I'd never heard anything good about it, which I later understood because people who go to Los Angeles and like it stay. And the people who don't like it come back to, New York where I was living and say how awful it is. So all I was meeting were the people who didn't like it, not the people who did. So I went back to New York, which is where I'm from. And I spent, I don't know, about 3 years in the city. I was trying to write scripts. They weren't very good. I tried to write a novel. It wasn't very good. Finally, I did write a script, and all this time I was doing various jobs to pay the rent, back when you could afford to live in New York. And I was working as a publicist at Paramount Pictures, and I got a job on the set of a movie called Love Story as the publicist. And the main reason I wanted it was so I could watch them make a movie and see if I could, learn stuff, which I hope I did. And then I wrote a book about the making of that movie after it became a big hit. And I took that money, which was like $2,500, and converted it to traveler's checks and went west. After 3 years, I didn't seem to be making a dent. So I drove to Los Angeles, where I'd never been, and I knew not a soul. I didn't even know it was by the water. I knew nothing about it. But I sent my two best scripts to this agency out there. And I really had no alternative plan for my life if they weren't interested. But fortunately they were, and things progressed from there.
And you co-wrote a movie that you eventually tried to get your name out of the credits called Invasion of the Bee Girls.
Well, that wasn't my title. That shows you why I have very scant affection for this movie, which I've never seen. It was originally called The Honey Factor, which I thought was a much cleverer title. Right? I thought it was a much cleverer movie, so it got rewritten.
Oh, that must have rendered you heartbroken, and you saw how the business can be then.
Well, there's good news and bad news about this business. I don't know if you read my memoir.
No.
Well, I wrote a memoir which is called The View from the Bridge, which is available from Amazon and whatever. I probably should have suggested that you take a look. In any case, one of the things that the memoir opens with is the funeral of a friend of mine who was a film director. Her name was Verna Field, and she was famous because she edited Joy. And she was a lovely woman, and she died young. And there was a funeral, and the person giving the sort of funeral oration was going on about how Verna Fields was the only decent human being in this dirty, rotten, stinking town. And, when you go to funerals, you don't go in a critical frame of mind. So I'm sitting there going, yeah, right, she was the only decent guy, blah, blah. And then when it was over, we were all standing outside the funeral place, waiting to go to her house for cold cuts or whatever we were going to do next. And I heard somebody standing nearby saying, well, that was the biggest crock of whatever you want to put in there I ever heard in my life. Mind you, he went on to say, I take a back seat to no man where my affection for Verna Field is concerned, but I do not think I would have lasted 40-some-odd years in this business had I not found it to be full of some of the kindest, most generous, most loyal, most wonderful, most creative people I hope to meet in this or any other life. And that was Walter Mirisch, who, produced just about every movie ever made. It was like somebody threw cold water on me. And if you were to read my memoir, it's not a bitter book because I thought, I met more cool people than mean people doing what I do.
That's very deep, though, I have to say. Walter Mirisch was a very wise man.
He's still alive.
Oh, he is?
He's like 97 years old.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He's the last of the brothers who's still alive. And if you want to talk about the Magnificent Seven, you want to talk about the Defiant Ones, you want to talk about Some Like It Hot, The Great Escape, it's a long list, man. Midway.
Judgment at Nuremberg, yeah.
Did he do Judgment at Nuremberg?
Well, United Artists made it.
That's interesting. We can look it up.
Yeah, those are all United Artists movies. So you wrote the very bold Sherlock Holmes novel, The 7% Solution. When it came down to making the movie, did you originally want to direct it?
I knew I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, but I wanted to be on the set while it was being directed, and I made that a condition. And they said, fine, sure, whatever. And the man who directed it, Herb Ross,
now
no longer alive, but was really good to me in ways that, in retrospect, become even more sort of moving and meaningful to me. He had such respect for the material that you had to fight him in order to change things. He just was, I was prepared to be much more ruthless than he was with this stuff. But that's, and he let me stay on the set and watch and ask questions. And of course, he introduced me to my childhood idol, Laurence Olivier, who had gone from being an impossibly dashing leading man, Heathcliff and Wuthering Heights and Captain McKeith and The Beggar's Opera and Henry V and Henry V and
Hamlet.
and Richard V. Now he was this really old man.
Yeah.
But I still got to meet him. It's the only business where you get to shake hands with your dreams.
Yeah. Were you satisfied, though, with the final result?
What an interesting question. I'm not sure one is ever satisfied with the final result. I went through a whole series of reactions over years to the movie. At first, my main complaint was all the things that I did wrong in the screenplay. And principally, I would describe it as too many words or too much talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a much better screenwriter after I tried directing the movie, which was time after time. Looking, back, and there were other things that one could critique about it, but as the years have gone by and I found myself rewatching, I thought, okay, yeah, there's a lot of talk in this movie, but it's very smart talk, and some of it is quite funny, and it's a very intelligent, unusual movie. It's not a Sherlock Holmes movie. It's a movie about Sherlock Holmes, which is not the same thing. So at the end, I'm extremely proud of it. I think, I'll sort of leave it at that. Originally I had specified that Bernard Herrmann was supposed to write the music,
Mm-hmm.
and they hired him, and then he died. And it was sort of interesting that Herb Ross, who again, as I said, was incredibly deferential, he said to me, well, who do you think should write the music now? Because he'd already done the first thing I had suggested. And I said, well, get John Addison. And so that's why John Addison wound up writing the music.
Huh. Your first movie as a director was the H.G. Wells story, Time After Time. How did that come to you?
Well, first of all, one should specify that it isn't H.G. Wells' story. It's a story about H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
Which is not quite the same thing. It came to me because when I was at Iowa, there was a guy in the writer's workshop who called himself Carl Alexander. He was his real name was Carl Thunberg, and he was the nephew of the Carl Thunberg who wrote Old Yeller and who gets a screenplay credit, which I suspect he doesn't deserve, on the 1959 Ben-Hur. And he sort of made his nephew change his name so they wouldn't be confused, writing screenplays in Hollywood as to Carl Thunberg. So this guy that I knew at Iowa's name was Carl Alexander. And after the 7% Solution had been the number one best-selling novel in the United States for something like 40 weeks in 1974, he contacted me. I hadn't seen him. And he said, I'm writing a novel which is kind of inspired by yours, and do you think you could read it and give me your thoughts? And in those days, I had a lot more time on my hands, and I said, sure. So he sent me what I recollect was 65 pages and an outline of the rest. And I read it. And I gave him my thoughts. And then I found that weirdly I couldn't forget it. It's not that I thought it was going to make a great book. In fact, what I thought was that it would make a great movie because it was essentially a visual idea. And some years earlier, when I was at Iowa, I saw the Jean-Luc Godard movie Alphaville. You ever see Alphaville?
No.
Alphaville is a curious movie. You should watch it.
Mm-hmm.
It starred an American actor whose career was totally made in France. His name was Eddie Constantine.
I've heard of him.
And
yeah.
Yeah, he played he was like a tough guy. I think he always played a character named Lemmy Caution. I think maybe he's Lemmy Caution in Alphaville, but it's a sci-fi movie. And it's a sci-fi movie where everything is the same as it is now, except that it all has different names.
Yeah.
So you would say, instead of give me the gun, you'd say, hand me that eliminator. Like that. So the audience was like seeing these things differently because they were called by different names. But otherwise, it was all the same. And, you know, it's funny about what your influences are. People say, what are your influences? And the bottom line is that sometimes you know what your influences are, and sometimes things influence you that you totally think you've forgotten all about, but they're somewhere in your head. And I think Alphaville, which I don't think I thought about once since I first saw it, maybe, you know, for a couple of weeks I thought about it, but this is years later. And now I'm thinking, wow, this could be a kind of Alphaville sort of thing, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and when I woke up, it was about 4 months later, and I thought, well, you're a jerk. Why don't you call him up and option his material, his book? Which is what I did. And then I wrote the screenplay. I wrote it quite quickly because I'd been thinking about it for 4 months. And then I said to him, Carl, if you want any of this for your book, help yourself. Because I thought if he gets his book published and I get my movie made, they'll cross-fertilize, which is more or less what happened.
Mm-hmm. And didn't the studio originally want Richard Dreyfuss for the role?
No, I never heard about Richard for H.G. Wells?
Yeah, that's what I read on IMDb.
I never heard that.
Okay.
Never heard that. He has to be an Englishman.
Yeah. I thought that was
I wanted
weird.
Derek Jacobi, because I'd been watching I, Claudius, and no one there had seen I, Claudius at Warner Brothers, so that wasn't flying. They thought they wanted Mick Jagger to play the Ripper.
Yeah.
But eventually I thought of Malcolm McDowell, and then they said, well, he always plays the bad guy. And I said, well, this time he's going to play the good guy, and that's called acting. Once they got over their shock, we did that.
Him and Mary Steenburgen, they had great chemistry on the movie, and eventually they fell in love. And
well, they fell in love on the movie.
Yeah.
They were falling in love while the cameras were rolling.
Yeah. I love the scene where he's in McDonald's getting a cup of tea, because I've never seen a cup of tea at McDonald's before.
Yes, and fries are pumped rich.
Yeah. It was Corey Feldman's first movie, too.
Yes, it was.
Time After Time. Is that true?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he same old Corey back then?
Well, I don't know anything about him afterwards. He was just a kid in the movie, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. How did you get Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan?
Well, I wanted to make a different movie. I had written a screenplay based on a novel by the Canadian Robertson Davies called Fifth Business. And it was one of the better screenplays I've written, and that's what I wanted to do, and that's all I wanted to do. So I kept turning down offers after time. I just wasn't in the mood. I wasn't listening. And finally, a friend of mine came over one Sunday night while we were barbecuing burgers, and she worked at Paramount as an executive, and she said, if you want to learn how to be a director, you shouldn't be sitting up here holding your breath like somebody who didn't get picked for the team or something. Why don't you come down and meet Harv Bennett at Paramount, because he's going to be in charge of producing the next Star Trek movie. And I think you guys would get along. And I said, Star Trek, is that the one with the guy with the pointy ears? And they're all running around in PJs? And she said, don't be such a snob. So I went and met with Harv, and we did get along fine. And that's how I became involved with it.
I think it's the best one of the series, and I think Ricardo Montalban should have won an Academy Award. He's really great at it.
I'm delighted. He was a lovely, lovely man, and I had a great experience working with him. He was the only actor who didn't get to rehearse with the rest of us because he was doing his television series. I didn't really know him that well. We had had lunch. And every actor only has one question about the director that they ask. They want to know, is he crazy? Am I gonna live? Do I have to yank the boat over the mountain or what? And so he didn't really know me, and he came out on the first day of filming, and it was a 6-page scene about why he's so pissed off at Captain Kirk, and he started off, he had it all memorized, and he hit all his marks, and he was sort of roaring it all at the top of his lungs, and I thought, wow, it's only the second movie I directed, and this guy's got more credits than the Empire State Building is tall. What's he going to do if I try to tell him something? But in the end, it worked out really well. And I said, Laurence Olivier once said that an actor should never show an audience his top, because once you show them your top, they know you got no place else to go. And I said, a crazy person can be much more scary if he never raises his voice. And we went from there. And it was a great experience.
Yeah.
I'm proud of my other 2 Star Treks as well, I have to say.
Yeah. I'm sure you heard this. You heard this all the time from people. When I was a little kid, I was terrified of the scene where Paul Winfield and the other guy has the worms in their ear. Yeah, it still makes me cringe to this day. Yeah.
Get it.
How was working with B.B. Besh?
When did you work with her? Are you asking me how?
I'm asking you when. Yeah. I never worked with her. I interviewed her daughter, Samantha Mathis, but I've never worked with her.
I worked with B.B. twice, as you probably know.
Mm-hmm.
And you work with people twice because you liked them the first time. And I thought she was a lovely woman and a very gifted actress. And in The Day After, which is my Nuke movie, she had a scene to do that was a really sort of horrific scene where she loses her marble while trying to make the bed. And she did this scene, and it was really quite wrenching to see, and she came off sort of shaking. Mm-hmm. And then a couple days later, we found out that the film lab had wrecked the film. Something had gone wrong. And I had to ask her to do it again. And she did. And actors are it's a separate breed. I think that once you talk about first responders and firefighters and policemen and coal miners, after you got them, mm-hmm. actors may have the toughest jobs because they got to go down into their own gut and dredge up stuff that the rest of us spend all our lives trying to avoid. And so if it makes them a little neurotic, you got to cut them some slack sometimes, because that's not an easy thing to do. They may make it look easy. In fact, it's their job to make you not see them working, but they are working. And she was something else. Yeah, and she died young too, and I was it's a loss.
Yeah, she was a talented lady. What was Merritt Butrick like to work with?
He was very nice. I think he needed more time
Mm-hmm.
as an actor and as an artist, to sort of develop and sort of become more sure-footed. But he was certainly a very sweet person.
Yeah, he was very talented too. I hear his name all the time among Star Trek fans. I mean, he is loved by Star Trek fans. They said he was like one of the best things about 2 and 3.
Well,
Now,
glad to hear it. Glad to hear it.
now when you did,
So are we ever going to discuss the adventure of the Peculiar Protocol?
oh, of course, I'm almost there. Now, when you did Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, I think that's a far better improvement over 5. Were you,
Well, isn't that rather damning with faint praise?
what's that?
Isn't that rather damning with faint praise?
Well, I think that the Star Trek movies with the odd numbers are not that great, but the even numbers are way better for some reason.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Did you, were you happy to jump on board and do another one?
Well, in a way, I was. I had gone off and made a movie that wasn't very good called Company Business, and it was the worst experience I'd ever had trying to make a movie. And you do try when you try to make a movie. You hope it'll be good, but a lot of things didn't work, and a lot of them were my fault. And so I was on sort of shaky emotional and or spiritual ground when I was asked to do a last Star Trek movie. And people were, disappointed with 5. I'm not sure I ever saw it. But I was on Cape Cod, and Leonard Nimoy was in Boston, and they said, "Do you have any ideas?" And I said, "No, because I never do." And then Leonard flew to the Cape, and I remember we spent a day walking up and down the beach, and he said, "Well," this is like 1990 or something, and he said, "Well, what about a movie about the Berlin Wall coming down, but it comes down in outer space between the Federations and the Klingons?" And I thought, wow, what a cool idea. And then very quickly was able to, once they primed my pump, sketch out the rest of the story, and that's how I became involved. And it was an amazingly prescient movie because, as Leonard explained to me, the Klingons had always been the sort of substitute for the Russians. And the coup d'etat in Star Trek 6 actually came about 3 months before the coup d'etat in the Soviet Union. And we called Gorbachev Gorkon. And when the coup happened in Russia, nobody knew whether Gorbachev was alive or dead.
Mm-hmm.
We were already in the cutting room. We'd already filmed it.
Wow. So really quickly, I want to ask you, you directed my favorite Tom Hanks movie, Volunteers.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. How did that come to you?
It was a script. Came to me just after I was married. I think I read it on my honeymoon, and I thought this was really funny. I think it already came with John Candy and Tom attached. And so, yeah, absolutely. We had a wonderful time making it. Maybe too good a time, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like how the movie combines 80s nostalgia humor of the 60s with 1930s matinee serial motif, especially in the last half, and it's got a little bit of the Bridge on the River Kwai in it, too.
Oh, there's the Bridge on the River Kwai, there's Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah. You had a David Lean influence for the movie then.
Well, again, we're going back to this whole subject of being influenced, and there's no question that, movies in general, of which I have a fairly encyclopedic knowledge, maybe not as comprehensive as Scorsese, but close when we sit down and start gabbing about this stuff. And certainly David Lean, and not only Lawrence, and not only The Bridge Under the Reply, but, Great Expectations and Oliver Twist and Hobson's Choice. And also, I think I was enormously influenced, not in Volunteers, but David Lean had a producer, not Sam Spiegel, but before that, a guy named Ronald Neame. And Ronald Neame made some terrific movies, all on his own as a director. He made The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. He made Gambit, which is a great movie with Michael Caine and Shirley MacLaine. And he made one of my all-time favorite movies, Tunes of Glory, again with Alec Guinness. And those things, they all landed with me and formed part of my sort of creative repertoire.
Yeah, I talked to Ernest Harada about 8 months before he passed, and he told me that he had a great time making the movie. You gave him a lot of freedom to bring that character to life, and he told me the origins of that wig he wore in the movie.
Yeah.
I would have never thought at all that it's...
Never throw anything away.
Yeah. That's brilliant. That is so brilliant. Isn't it ironic, though, that Tom and Rita caught the corona in Australia and not the jungles of Spain 35 years ago?
Sorry, say that again?
I said, isn't it ironic that Tom and Rita caught the corona in Australia and not Spain 35 years ago?
Well, we weren't in Spain.
Oh, I always heard that you guys shot that movie in Spain.
Mexico.
Oh, Mexico. I'm sorry. Mexico.
Oaxaca.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So let's get...
They're all right.
Yeah, I heard that they found a vaccination over there, and they were able to get back to Los Angeles okay.
A vaccination?
Or something. They were given something along those lines. I don't know.
If there were a vaccine, man, everybody would go crazy to get hold of a vaccine. And you can't give a vaccine after you've got the disease.
Mm-hmm.
You only give a vaccine before it ever comes near you. You get a polio vaccine when you're born. You get a smallpox vaccine when you're born.
Right.
You get all that stuff first, and that stimulates your immune system, and then you can't get it. Once you've got it, it's too late.
That's right. I'm getting my words all mixed up. I drank too much coffee today, so I'm getting my words all mixed up. So the new book, the Adventure of Peculiar Protocols. Again, I don't know anything about Sherlock Holmes, and
We do now.
In his entire history. But okay, you've written 3 Sherlock Holmes books now. What draws you to Sherlock Holmes?
I think I've written 4. I'm working on the 5th.
Oh, I thought you've only done 3. Sorry.
There's the 7% Solution.
Right.
There's the West End Horror. There's the Canary Trainer. And there's the Adventure of the Peculiar Protocol.
Okay.
So that's 4. And I've taken time off from the 5th one to have this conversation.
Oh, you're writing another one. Awesome.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So where did the story come from?
Well, all my life, I should back up a little bit and explain my relationship to Sherlock Holmes, and then we can talk about where the story came from.
Mm-hmm.
My dad gave me the Sherlock Holmes stories to read when I was about 11, and there are 60 of them. And they just, talk about coming down with some incurable disease. I came down with Sherlock Holmes, and I never recovered. I read all those stories. I couldn't believe what I was reading, and I just loved them. And I pretty much hated every Sherlock Holmes movie I ever saw. I just thought they were stupid, camp, and they didn't resemble what Arthur Conan Doyle had written, which I took very seriously. And then people would say to me, "Oh, your old man's a shrink. Is he a Freudian?" This was in high school. "Is your old man a Freudian?" I didn't know. So I asked my dad, I said, "Are you a Freudian, Pop?" And he said, "Well, it's a silly question because it's no more possible to discuss the history of psychoanalysis and not start with Freud than it is to discuss the history of the discovery of America by the West and not start with Columbus or the Vikings, but to suppose that nothing has happened since Columbus, to be pretty rigid, pretty doctrinaire." And same thing with psychoanalysis, because when a patient comes to see me, I listen to what they say, I listen to how they say it, I'm curious as to what they don't say, I'm interested in how they're dressed, are they on time, what's their body language. I am, in short, searching for clues from them as to why they are not happy. And I go, "Gee, that sounds like detective work, kind of like what you're doing." And he said, "Well, it is like detective work in a way." And then I realized who my dad had always reminded me of. He reminded me of Sherlock Holmes. And then I found myself wondering, well, how much does does Arthur Conan Doyle know about the life and writing of Sigmund Freud? And the first thing you realize is, oh, they're both doctors. Arthur Doyle, Freud. And they both died within 9 years of each other. In the same town. Really? London? Okay. And Holmes is a cocaine addict. And Freud was also a user, although he weaned himself off it. And these sort of coincidences are sort of piling up. And ultimately, after, thinking on and off about the whole thing for 15 years, I sat down and wrote my first Holmes book. And of course, when you write a Sherlock Holmes book, you have to write it as Dr. Watson. Watson is the guy who chronicles the stories in the original. So I am not, and I don't put my name on it as the author. I say as edited by. Because it's by Dr. Watson. So I'm a kind of a forger, is what I am. And forgery has come to interest me a lot. I collect books on the subject. I'm interested in forgers, being, as I say, a kind of a forger myself. And once you are interested in forgery, it isn't long before you trip across the most vicious and destructive forgery of all time, which, as you now know, is the Protocol of the Learned Elders of Zion. You read the book, yes?
Yes.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And I thought, if you set a thief to catch a thief, what about setting a forger to catch a forgery? And maybe, since no matter how many times the protocols are exposed as fakes, and pretty clumsy fakes, by the way, there are people in various parts of the world, from Louisiana to Egypt, who just want to keep those things going, no matter how many people have explained or proved that they're fake. But I don't think anybody had ever tried to do it in a novel. And in a way, in an era of fake news,
right,
maybe this would be a way to take on Donald Trump. So that was my idea.
Wow, that's interesting. How long did it take to write?
Well, that's a very deceptive question to ask a writer or a painter or whatever, because the physical act and the mental preparation are not necessarily entirely congruent. It took me, I don't know, a few months to write the book. But it took me 10 years before I sat down to do it. 10 years of reading about forgery, 10 years of thinking about
Yeah. Procrastination.
Yeah, when somebody paints a painting, what, depending on who it is, because everybody, does it different, how much interior thought or preparation or consideration did they give before they ever started mixing a color? I don't know, but I suspect it varied. Leonardo, he didn't paint very much, and a lot of the stuff he painted, he never finished. So, go figure.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any Kurt Vonnegut influence in you?
Well, I knew him at the University of Iowa because he taught there,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to go out with his daughter, so I knew him a lot.
Yeah.
I was in and out of that house during the couple of years during which he became famous. So I used to go home on vacations from Iowa back to New York and mention Kurt Vonnegut's name, and people would say, how do you spell that? And no one had ever heard of him. And by the time I finished college, he was all the rage. And I didn't begin by reading him until after college. That is, I didn't read until later. Was he an influence? Is he an influence? Again, you trip on that influence question because it's sort of hard to determine when you're talking, when you're asking people, who are your influences?
Yeah.
Because there's people that you think influenced you. There's people that you wish would have influenced you. There are people that you'd like to think influenced you, or that you'd like other people to think you'd influence it. Yeah, I was really influenced by Marcel Proust. Well, maybe you were, maybe you just wish you were. And there are other things, and I bet you can, in searching your own life, think about things that have happened to you that you thought, I'll never forget this as long as I live.
Oh, yeah.
But you forgot it. You can't remember it. And there are other things that you thought you would never remember, and you have no reason to remember. Some class that a kid in third grade made sitting next to you.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, or some mannerism that you picked up from somebody, a comedian, or somebody in the playground, or you don't know what, that's an influence.
Yeah.
And you can't even quite remember, or you don't remember that it happened. But you incorporated it into your character, your personality, your aesthetic, yardstick, traits, whatever you want, or your politics. Who knows what those influences are? I know that I was influenced by my father. I know I was influenced by the movies. I know I'm influenced by Herman Melville, Mark Twain, William Shakespeare, Alexander Dumas, Jules Verne, Groucho Marx, Mozart, Handel. It's a lot. But there's a lot more that I probably am not even aware of.
You think I should rephrase the word with inspiration?
Well, that's an interesting... I would have to think about the difference between influence and inspiration. I think that... I guess I'm a kind of an easy... an inspiree. I'm easily inspired. Wonderful things get me all jazzed. I get inspired by things that have nothing to do with, or directly to do with what I do. I'm a music fool. I listen to Mozart, or I listen to Bach, and I'm inspired, or I watch the movies and I get inspired, or I read the books and I'm inspired. So I'm a cheap date in that department. I mean, it's not like I don't have any critical yardstick, but usually if I'm having a good time, I'm not a great analyst of why something is wonderful. I can usually analyze why things aren't. But when they're good, you just get jazzed and want to go out and do something.
Yeah.
At least I do.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
I'm a screenwriter, and I get influenced all the time by stuff.
well, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
You're supposed to. When I started writing, my dad said, when art students, you learn art, they send them to copy old masters. You walk through the Louvre, and there's people in there copying paintings. You learn by copying. So I started, writing my own pretend Sherlock Holmes stories when I was, 12 or 13. I was copying.
Hmm.
And, the whole history of art, any kind of art, is a history of cut and paste.
Hmm. Absolutely. And people get that mixed up with blatant stealing. But I don't really think it is.
Well, it didn't, years ago, back when you're talking about, like, Shakespeare's time,
Yeah.
there was no such thing as copyright, and he always got his plots from someplace else. Um, Romeo and Juliet is based on something else. Hamlet is based on something else. And you add to it. You make it your own. I didn't invent Star Trek, but I made it my own.
Hmm. So you mentioned before that you're working on a new one. How many Sherlock stories do you think you have left in you?
Good question. Good question. There was, when I wrote The Adventure of the Peculiar Protocols, it was 26 years after I had written The Canary Trainer. So you write them when you get ideas for them. And the one I'm writing now, my agent gave me the idea. And I thought, that sounds cool. I'm going to do that. I'll dedicate the book to him, because he earned it.
Nice.
But if I don't have a Sherlock Holmes idea, I will see no need to write another one, unless it's about earning a living, which also has to figure lately. But in fact, you can get tired of trying to write like somebody else. It takes a lot of effort. To write like Arthur Conan Doyle is hard. And you're not, again, when we were talking about actors trying to make things not look like they're working, the whole point about art is you don't want to show the effort. There's a wonderful Italian word called sprezzatura. And I like Italian because it's all phonetic. So it's like Sprezzutura or something like that. Sprezzatura. And it's the art of making the difficult look easy. It's about taking the extra time after you've finished painting the Mona Lisa. You get all the paint from under your fingernails and clean yourself up and come out in a silk suit and say, oh, this is just something I dashed off. And when you are writing a book, whether you're imitating Doyle or imitating yourself, the idea is to not break a sweat, or at least not show the audience that you're breaking a sweat. I don't want to see somebody up there acting.
Yeah.
I want to see it happening. When you watch Fred Astaire, he makes it look so easy.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see it happening. It's just happening. Sometimes when you watch people dancing, you sense all the huffing and puffing.
Yeah. Have you thought about adapting this book or any of the other ones after 7% Solution into a movie or a miniseries?
Oh, I'd love to. Nobody's been asking me at the moment, but the night is young.
Yeah. So it's available on Amazon. And do you have anything else you're working on? Are you fully retired from movies?
No, I'm not retired from movies at all. I just finished writing a large movie. Nobody knows what's happening to any of this stuff at the moment. So no, I'm not retired. There's no retirement for writers. I guess Philip Roth finally said that he was stopping, but he has been incredibly productive. And, I'm not. I'll die in harness.
Nice. Well, Nick, I thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sorry if my coffee mouth just slurred over my words too much.
Well, The Adventure of the Peculiar Protocols is a mouthful. It's a hard title to say, I realize that.
Yeah. But before we go though, I wanted to let you know though, even though we're not going to get into it, I love the day after. I talked to Lori Lethan about that when she was on the podcast. She enjoyed working with you, and
She's a doll.
yeah, and I grew up watching the Pied Piper of Hamelin and Fairy Tale Theater. That was a really good episode.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to do it all in rhyme.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for coming on today. Best of luck with the next book. I'll keep an eye out for it. And happy Easter.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Nick Meyer. Ain't he a cool guy? He is a really cool guy and a passionate writer. Very interesting, too. And I enjoyed talking to him. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.